So any thoughts on any of that? I've been talking for a bit now on my understanding of spiritual experiences and where we find them. Any disagreements with those or things that we'd want to amplify or expand on?
Well, this has kind of generated a new idea for me, which is that maybe it's useful to think of spirituality as being on a continuum. I mean, you sort of hinted at that, but I think there's more like I thought it was maybe bimodal, but if you're all the way on one end of that, then you have what people who are religious used to call mystical experiences. That would be like on the extreme end of a transcendent experience. And my own way of thinking about it is that what's transcended really is ego. We talk about it as transcending the laws of nature and transcending all these other things that I don't really believe actually happen. But I do believe you can have a felt sense of doing those things. And those are things that are good to shoot for in life. It's like you want to have those kind of experiences, but it's a matter of degree. I have some experiences where, wow, that's pretty cool. I have other experiences that are where I lose track of other things and I'm really in the experience. Right. Other experiences that are even further along on that. I'm hoping to have one this weekend, having a drum circle at my house. When those, sometimes they're just okay because I'm sort of organizing, making sure I'm keeping everything going. When there are several really good drummers there, so I don't have to worry about it, I don't have to take care of it, I can lose myself in the rhythm. And I almost, I wouldn't call it, my ego is destroyed. I forgot the term. Dissolved entirely. But I have a lot less ego than in my everyday life.
Right. You know, there's an interesting article written in the 60s, I think, called De-Automation and the Mystical Experience, or the Spiritual Experience, I can't remember the exact title. And what he describes is the fact that a lot of the mystical practices that many religious traditions prescribe actually cause the brain to sort of shut down in some ways, or to function differently. It turns off certain parts of the brain, it turns on other parts of the brain. And so the fact that all these mystical traditions produce a similar reported effect on the person, again filtered through a particular religious framework, is a reflection of brain chemistry and brain function as much as anything else. And so one could cultivate that same experience in a secular category, or by secular behaviors, that would have the same kind of emotional impact on the person, but it doesn't have to include the religious practice to get there. I see a chat. Lori, go ahead.
It's interesting. This is an interesting topic for me because I have a friend who unfortunately just passed away quite suddenly a couple weeks ago at the age of 60. And he was born Jewish in Reading, Pennsylvania, but he always felt that he was, Native American. And he pursued in his whole life, aside from coaching fencing and being a very good fencer for Penn State, he went to Pine Ridge and he interacted with the Lakota up there, and he went to the Southwest and he adopted a great number of practices in Native American. So what my point here, though, is that we have these long discussions sometimes, and for him, he finds a feather on the ground, and the bird has gifted him the feather, and it's very meaningful, and it's a spiritual thing for him. It was meant to happen. For me, I see that the bird molted and he lost a feather. I mean, it means nothing to me. And so a lot of what people think is spiritual, as Chet said earlier, it's between the ears. I mean, but also you are searching sometimes for meaning in things. Like you remember down in Chicago, there was a bridge that was weeping underneath and people were going and thinking it was the Virgin Mary and looked like, whatever. Well, Christ, I mean, to me, that just looks like a wall that's leaking, I mean, I don't see this, I don't get it, but people take meaning in it. And so, but I see meaning in other things that I find, but again, it comes from within, I think, more than from without. So
look, we are a meaning-making species. That's what we do.
I mean, what the rabbi just said,
we imagine what they are.
Yeah, what the rabbi just said, I thought like that was really well put. Because it always drives me nuts when I see someone hit a home run and then they cross themselves and look at the sky like God made the home run. Like no, you did it, dude. You know, I mean, like you just hit that ball out of there. That was pretty cool. You know, why can't you give yourself credit for what you did? Why do you have to find this kind of significance? But there are times when I can't explain why some things are the way they are. I just, and I don't know why I can't. And then sometimes that just becomes a meaningful thing. But I
It's
do feel,
something, don't you think something can be meaningful to you without having to say, somebody created this experience with the
right.
intention of having me have this experience?
Well,
Right.
that goes back to the rainbow. I mean, you know, at the very beginning, I mean, that's very true. And we were one time out in the Southwest and we found it and we stopped the car. It was like in Arizona because it was this double rainbow all of a sudden. You know, it was the most amazing thing. And you just had to go look at it. And it was remarkable. But it wasn't like someone said, like, cool, let's have Lori and Kathy see a rainbow. You know, I mean, it just no, that was just we happened to be in the right place at the right time. So
Yeah.
I think if you start the sentence with, when you're describing experience, with the word wow, you're well on your way toward something that could be seen as transcendent in some way.
yeah, I agree. I agree. But it depends on but if I have to feel that something behind it was creating that, you know, and we as a group don't feel that way, you know, that
Yeah, we don't need to. I mean, I know people that look at the images from the space telescopes, and then they compare that to subatomic imagery, and you see how there's wonderful parallels. I don't know if you remember, there was a short film in the 1980s called Powers of 10. If you haven't seen it, look it up on YouTube. It's only about 10 minutes long, Powers of 10. And what they do is they start from a person sitting next to Soldier Field in Chicago, and they take him at a distance of 1 meter. Then they go out to 100 meters, 1,000 meters, you know, and then it keeps going up by powers of 10, all the way out to the end of the Milky Way galaxy. And then they zoom back into the person at 1 meter, and then they go to 10 to the minus 1 meter, and then 10 to the minus 2 meters. And then they zoom in on the atomic structure, and it gives you this huge sense of perspective, but also it's amazing how similar the cosmic view and the subatomic view are. And that's, again, one of those wow moments that you can analyze on the subatomic level and structures and distances and powers of 10, but you can also just appreciate the beauty of it. And it's that non-rational category where you don't have to analyze it even if you could.
You don't have to say, that must have been created, because how else could you have something like a solar system where you've got a big thing with a lot of smaller things revolving around it, just like an atom? That can't be a coincidence. That must have been designed.
Yeah, so we talked a bit about this in an earlier class on the design theory argument, and David Hume does a nice job demolishing it when he points out all the things that don't work so well in the world, and he imagines that, you know, maybe it was done by a committee, you know? And you know, a committee, it's sort of uneven, and sometimes it works well, and sometimes it doesn't. Or maybe it was done by a really young god that didn't know exactly what it was doing, and so there's some rough edges. Or maybe it was done by a really old god that then died, and it's sort of running on without him. And, you know.
Or distracted guy.
Yeah, right. It got busy with another universe somewhere else. And
it should take 8 days, but I blew it.
Projects in the house, they never quite get done, you know. So, I mean, once you get into design, you know, you can go really, you can have some fun with it. So I guess the last thing maybe we can do is, I have one last poem to take a look at. It's a poem by Yehuda Amichai, again, that we've used here occasionally. And I find it to be a really meaningful expression of many of the kinds of spirituality that we've been talking about here. So this is a poem called The Jews. Go to the right page here. Turn off all the zoom windows I don't want. The Jews are like photos in a display window. All of them together, short and tall, alive and dead, brides and grooms, bar mitzvah boys and babies. Some are restored from old yellowed photographs. Sometimes people come and break the window and burn the pictures, and then they start photographing and developing all over again, and displaying them again, sad and smiling. Rembrandt painted them wearing Turkish turbans with beautiful burnished gold. Chagall painted them hovering in the air, and I paint them like my father and my mother. The Jews are an eternal forest preserve where the trees stand dense, and even the dead cannot lie down. They stand upright, leaning on the living, and you cannot tell them apart, just that the fire burns the dead faster. And what about God? God lingered like the scent of a beautiful woman who once faced them in passing and they didn't see her face. Only her fragrance remained, kinds of perfumes. Blessed be the creator of kinds of perfumes. A Jewish man remembers the sukkah in his grandfather's home, and the sukkah remembers for him the wandering in the desert that remembers the grace of youth, and the tablets of the 10 Commandments, and the gold of the golden calf, and the thirst and the hunger that remembers Egypt. And what about God? According to the settlement of divorce from the Garden of Eden and from the temple, God sees his children only once a year, on Yom Kippur. The Jews are not a historical people, and not even an archaeological people. The Jews are a geological people with rifts and collapses and strata and fiery lava. Their history must be measured on a different scale. The Jews are buffed by suffering and polished by torments like pebbles on the seashore. The Jews are distinguished only in their death when the mighty hand flings them. They skip 2 times or 3 on the surface of the water before they drown. Some time ago, I met a beautiful woman whose grandfather performed my circumcision long before she was born. I told her, "You don't know me and I don't know you, but we are the Jewish people. Your dead grandfather and I the circumcised, and you the beautiful granddaughter with golden hair. We are the Jewish people." And what about God? Once we sang, "There is no God like ours." Now we sing, "There is no God of ours." But we sing. We still sing. So what jumps out at you about that poem? What in particular was meaningful or resonant for you?
It's incredibly sad in a way.
Okay.
But at the same time, it suggests a continuity, no matter what the sadness, and that there's happiness within that, but that the Jews are very often misunderstood and sort of by other people. I don't know.
Did you catch some of the allusions, like someone who faced you in passing and you didn't see her face? It's like when God passes Moses on the mountain and he covers Moses, and Moses can't see God's face, but he can see his back.
There's a lot of people hiding. There's a lot of God hiding his face from the people.
Right. And then the idea that blessed be the creator of kinds of perfumes, that's the Havdalah blessing at the end of Shabbat. Or who creates all the variety of spices. What about this, the trees stand dense and even the dead cannot lie down? The fire burns the dead faster. What's that alluding to?
It kind of sounded like the Holocaust, but I don't know.
Yeah, right. Like the bodies who would be in the cars and fall down. And also the breaking them and burning the pictures. I mean, that's the pogrom. That's the attack.
Well, it made me think of Kristallnacht.
Right. Yeah, breaking the window, exactly.
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought of.
At the end, there is no God like ours, Ein Kelohenu. And now he plays with that and says, well, we sing Ein Eloheinu. There is no God of ours. But we still sing. There's something about that, the marching, the singing, the moving forward. We are alive. There's an anthem of the Holocaust called Zognit Kainmo, which is Never Say. It's called the Warsaw Ghetto Rebellion song, but it was actually written in the Vilna Ghetto when they heard about the Warsaw Ghetto. But the key line at the end of it is Mir seinen da, we are here. Or think about that, what people have been saying in the aftermath of Charlottesville, we will outlive them. That there is an eternal life to this people and we'll be around. It's drawing on the strength of the past, but also finding inspiration in it in many ways. And this poem is one of those poems that includes the sense of roots, a sense of archaeology and geological kind of history, literary allusions, and also that special moment. Some time ago, I met a woman, and I made a connection with her in her life story and in my life story and in our shared life story, and that connected all of us. And that's also a kind of transcendence too. Sometimes spirituality is a moment that makes you lose all words, and sometimes it's one that gifts you with experiences you can turn into words that then become meaningful experiences for other people. So, any last thoughts on spirituality? This is our last class of this year. We take a break for our winter break, and we will pick it up with Jewish identity questions starting in January. Any last thoughts on spirituality?
A very interesting topic.
Mm-hmm. Good.
My sister always defines herself as someone who's very spiritual, but mostly what it comes down to is she has wind chimes. And when the wind chimes ring, she thinks it's my mother, our mother. So, but again, why not?
Well, look, one of the more popular categories on dating websites is spiritual but not religious.
Yeah, exactly.
And what do people mean by that? Well, they mean they have a sense of depth or a sense of beauty, and maybe they mean they talk to the spirits. I don't know, but for many people who use it, religion sounds like rules.
Yeah.
And strictures and institutions and control and establishment and clergy, heaven forbid. But spiritual seems to be positive. It's all the positives of I have some depth. I'm not just purely rational. I have an emotional life too. I have deeper connections. I'm part of something larger than myself. I'm open to wider experiences. So you have to sort of interrogate that spiritual but not religious. Sometimes it is a natural spirituality, and sometimes it's more supernatural, but it's definitely seeing spirituality in opposition to religion. Where you might say, someone might be worried, if I just said I'm spiritual, you'll think I'm religious. So I'm going to clarify, I'm spiritual but not religious.
But I think in a sense that it's a reluctance to release religion. Because religion connects you to all these other things, and you don't want to have the priest say, this is what you got to do, or you got to say 9 Holy Marys and whatever, but you still don't want to give up the idea that somehow there's more to life than just the materiality of what's around you, in a sense. That rationality is not quite enough.
I'd also speculate, this would require some survey data, that people think of being religious as being politically conservative, and being spiritual but not religious as being more socially liberal and flexible. There is a movement. There is a movement called the religious left. These are people like Pastor Barber in South Carolina that's running a campaign on a war on poverty, Poor People's Mission, or I forget what the
Father Flager in Chicago.
And Flager in Chicago, and Jesse Jackson. There are plenty of people who are very religious. Raphael Warnock, right? There are plenty of people who are very religious, but who are progressive, and who don't let the religious right claim religion. But I think on the dating scene, maybe, if you go into it saying, I'm religious, people are going to assume that means one thing. If you say I'm spiritual but not religious, it means I'm open to big things, but I'm not what you think of when you think of someone who says they're religious.
I'm not sure if this is right. I can't remember. I think it might have been Emil Durkheim, who was a sociologist like 100 plus years ago, who talked about religion and spirituality and said that religion, like parentheses, when done right, is a group of people who are together with the intention of supporting the individuals within that group to have spiritual experiences.
Right. And so then, this is what we talked about at the beginning, where it used to be that going to church and hearing the sermon and the choir singing in the big, beautiful building, that was your spiritual experience, and that was channeled through the religious institution. And now people might have it visiting like Notre Dame or, big, beautiful buildings of another religious faith. I found St. Peter's absolutely stunningly beautiful, but it's not my tradition, and I wasn't there for a service. I was there to appreciate the artwork and the architecture, and it was a different kind of inspiring experience. But yes, you're right. It used to be that religious community was where you went for that kind of channeling, uplift, supernatural experience. But
I don't think Durkheim meant necessarily supernatural. I think he was just more about having.
Well, he was studying other cultures, and the cultures he was studying were supernaturally oriented.
Yeah.
But yes, it could be. He himself was a little more secularized. In fact, he was one of the foundational thinkers that influenced Mordechai Kaplan, who formed Reconstructionist Judaism. Sharon Wein used to sort of jokingly say that Mordechai Kaplan was 3 Ds. Emil Durkheim and his religious sociology, John Dewey and his pragmatic philosophy, and traditional davening. Dewey, Durkheim, and davening. And you combine them all together and you get Mordechai Kaplan. Anyways, so thanks for joining me on this spiritual journey. And we will pick it up next year. Hope you all have a wonderful Hanukkah experience.